Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar this evening where we are talking about sustaining anti-racist classrooms, schools, and classrooms. My name is Malloron Hodge, and I'm the Program Development Manager here at Digital Promise, working on with the League of Innovative Schools team. So we have an amazing panel with us tonight, and we will just sit back and have a conversation as if we're on the couch this evening, and then we'll have a moment later on in our discussion to open it up for any questions that you may have. But if you have any reactions, any questions, feel free to drop those in the chat as we are having this discussion. So today we have some amazing panelists, and we're just gonna jump right into the questions with having them share a little bit more about themselves. So they're going to say their name and also their connection to the topic that we have on hand. So first, we'll start with our amazing student, Davion Trader.
Hello, my name is Davion Trader, and I am a super senior at Franklin County Early College. My connection to this topic is from my experience as an African-American female from a rural county. My experience is often observed but not heard, and I was excited when Malloron asked me to join.
Thank you, Davion. Deshanna.
Hi, I'm Deshanna Wisniewski. I'm a second grade teacher in Hampton Township School District. My connection to this topic is growing up in a predominantly white school. I've had a lot of different experiences where my voice wasn't heard or even acknowledged, and also as an African-American female teacher in a lot of different types of school districts, I've had some challenges along the way.
Awesome. Dr. Michelle. I think you're muted. Michelle, you're muted.
Sorry. My name is Michelle George, and I am a teacher at Avonworth High School. And my connection to this topic began when I started out as a teacher. I was teaching in an urban setting, and then just continued that passion for all students as I entered into Avonworth, and then became interested in pursuing a doctoral degree. And I conducted a study on a case study of 6 teachers in Pittsburgh and their experiences as urban educators. And I continue to write and love to talk about the topic. So that's where I come from. I'm really interested in social justice. That's my passion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Michael?
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Warren, and I'm the assistant principal at Martin Luther King Elementary School. When you look at a lot of schools' mission statements, the one thing that most people have in common is this idea of equal opportunity or education for all. Yet we find that not all students are receiving that equal opportunity or have that option of an equitable education. One thing that I remember being a substitute, and we actually went through a training, and it was suggested that the highest scoring African-American student will score significantly lower than a low scoring white student in the classroom. And what bothered me about that was the simple fact that even at our best, and I say our because I'm a Black man, we weren't measuring up to even the lowest scoring white student. Then you look at an all Black district where predominantly all white teachers or a lot of white administrative staff members, right? I grew up in this Pittsburgh public schools where I remember having a few Black teachers, so I thought it was the norm. Then I became an educator and realized I was one of two in my district, right? The statistics show that there are 2% African-American men in the classrooms across the country. Yet most of the school system, especially the public sector, is low income students of color. Yet we're being taught by people who don't walk in our shoes, who don't understand some of the struggles. And so I've been very passionate about this because I was the little Black boy in an all Black district being taught by all white people who had to fight some things that they would never understand. There's a great poem by his name is Mr. Dickerson, and he talks about not having a pencil. And the concept is this: the teacher's upset about this Black boy not having a pencil, yet before coming to school, this young Black student had to prepare the sibling, had to make breakfast, had to make sure mom was okay because mom really wasn't in the picture, had to get to school, get the kids dressed, had to make sure their homework was done the night before, had to get to school, showed up late, did all these adult things, yet didn't have a pencil. And what happens is when you don't understand the shoes that African-American people walk in, and particularly students of color in a poverty situation, we complain about them not having a pencil, yet the big issue here was the fact that there's all these other needs not being met, and we miss it. And so this work just reminds us of why it's important, not just to have Black men in the classroom, why it's important to have people who are passionate about young Black students or students of poverty, but why we have to come in and tackle these barriers, these racist barriers that prevent students from having that equitable education that we all so often throw into our mission statement. So you can see I'm a little passionate about this. I'm gonna stop before we really get started, but it's just one of those things that I'm connected to, not just because it's part of my research, but it's because it's a part of the life that I've lived. And it's the life that I chose to make sure young people who come up after me don't have to deal with some of the inequities that I had to deal with growing up. So that's me, y'all.
Thank you, Michael. And as they say in the Black church, amen and amen. So as you all see, we have, as the kids say, I hope I'm doing it right, it's about to be lit during this webinar. And so again, if you want to just like throw any love to the panelists this way in the chat, or also just shout out like where you're calling in from, we would love to know that. So let's dig into it. We're gonna get to some of those points that you brought up, Michael, but would love for you, each of you to just share, at what age do you recall acknowledging your race for the first time in the classroom?
I'll share one story. I was in second grade and it was the last day of school. And I remember being suspended by my white teacher because there was a website where you could look up houses. I thought it was cool. You're in second grade, you know your address. I was able to see my house. I was suspended for what they considered tax fraud. We were told that basically people were logging on and sharing tax information. I'm a second grader, mind you. What stood out to me and why I saw this as an issue of race was it was actually a class full of students. I was one of a few Black students, and the girl next to me happened to be a white girl on the same website. As a matter of fact, she typed the website in for me so that I could show her my home. I was suspended, she was not. I had made an issue of it, and I couldn't understand what the big dilemma was, yet I went home on the last day of school for what was a tax issue, and my white counterpart remained in school. That never went on her record. It's one of those things where officially I broke a rule, unofficially it's like driving while Black. You can't prove it, but you know what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Michael.
I have one. Mine was actually in the fourth grade. When it comes to in the classroom, we had to do a heritage project and we had to share what countries that our family came from. And so I took the paper home and mom was like, these white people don't understand how hard that is to talk about. And she's like, tell your teacher your family came from slave ships from Africa, and see what she says. And so I go to school and I say what my mom said, and I got in so much trouble. I had an attitude that wasn't true, and I need to dive deeper. And it was like this whole thing. And it was just like, why can't you see me for who I am? Don't say you're colorblind, but say that you see me. And that was probably like the hardest for me, because it's like I got singled out. Everyone else had their countries, their flags. And I wish she handled the situation differently to be more inclusive and to be more mindful. But that was, I guess, the big one for me when I was in elementary school.
The first time that I remember acknowledging my race would probably have to be elementary school. I have always been one out of the 2 or 3 African American students in class. I believe that I learned more from those students who were African American, but I will always still be friendly to the other students.
Thank you, Davi. And Michelle, what about you?
Different positionality completely. I would say the first time that I acknowledged my race in the classroom was probably when I was working with adjudicated youth from Philadelphia. And I was the only white person in the room with probably about 20 to 30 Black students. And it was just a different experience for me. And I had to realize the importance of being culturally responsive at that point, and building on the funds of knowledge of the home, the ethnic, the cultures of all of my students. And that was probably the first time that I really had to acknowledge my race in the classroom.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. And also, I just want to name, as you all are talking, I also want to explain to all of the attendees just the makeup of this group. And so we have different levels of like experience as educators. Also, we have experience of a student that's also represented here. We also have the intersection of identities and also gender as well. And so we were very intentional and thoughtful about putting this together, because we wanted to have this conversation where each person could bring their experiences to the table, while also name and talk across these intersections of difference. So I really appreciate all of you sharing that. And also it's interesting because the way that question was phrased, it seems like a lot of the memories when you think about acknowledging your race come from this negative place, as opposed to this place of honoring and just that culturally relevant piece that it constantly seems like it's this thing that we're throwing around now, culturally relevant teaching, culturally relevant pedagogy, but just thinking about how that was the first time you think about this negative experience that happened, and knowing, especially I can think about like in the Black community, we talk about race all the time, we honor it, and it's like, we celebrate that in the community, and really thinking about how we can bring that into the classroom and really think about how that connects to our topic of sustaining this anti-racist space. And also we tie in that piece around anti-Blackness as well. Does anyone have any reactions to that?
Yeah, so Laurent, I wanted to say it's interesting you mentioned that. One thing I'll say is young students of color, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians in some regard, a lot of us are reminded early on of our race in most of the time, a negative connotation. It's connected to something negative. You know, an Asian student scores low on a test. Aren't all Chinese people smart? Well, whoa, wait, what? You know, things like that. There was an article that went and made national news a couple of years ago where the president of a national music association insisted that African American and Hispanics were not knowledgeable enough to perform music at a high level. And this was mentioned at a conference. And, you know, for young people in city schools like New York or Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, who were Black or Hispanic, who already felt like they were at a disservice, here's this national article that tells us, by the way, you'll never be smart enough to comprehend music at a large level, right? And so right off the bat, we're reminded of what we can't do because of our color. The counter to that is you look at Michelle, and I think it's a great example. Michelle, as an adult, had to recognize her race and the differences because she then had to put herself essentially in her students' shoes in order to really relate. But it was a different route, you know, because you talk to Black people and you ask them to describe themselves. Most of the characteristics, one of the characteristics are usually, I'm Black. I'm a teacher, I'm a musician, but I'm also a Black man. Michelle, if you explain yourself, Michelle has all these beautiful qualities. She probably never has to express her color, and that's the beauty, pun intended, I guess, of being white. And yet we're reminded of our race as people of color often, and it's usually based on something negative. It's just something that really makes me think, because whether it's something we experience like Davion, whether it's something that we're told through an article, we have to know early on. And you talked about it, Mallory. We know our color of our skin. We get the talk all the time, young Black boys, what to do when a police pulls you over. You know, we're the fact that a lot of people who look like us are automatically thrown into special needs programs, right? You know, we're reminded. Now, they'll never say it's because he's Black, it's because he's not comprehending the material. Yet we're learning material that was never meant to allow us to succeed in the first place. But I digress. You know, point being, we recognize the color of our skin and we're reminded so often, yet a lot of our white counterparts, it's a beautiful thing. And don't get me wrong, I wish I could be that way. They don't have to see it until, in this case, they recognize it. And that's why I appreciate people like Michelle who know that in order to be successful in incorporating an anti-racist climate in your classroom, you have to know that I am white. I have a privilege because I'm white. And in order to connect with my students, I need to stop and not see things through my white lens, but see things through the right lens and be able to relate to them and connect with them because their experiences are much different. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I think you bring up some valid points. And it's also, you talked about this piece around not seeing it through the white lens and seeing it through the right lens. I also think that seeing it through the right lens is seeing it through your white lens, and like sitting with that and understanding how the experiences are different and really honoring the culture and thing that they're bringing. So I think you bring up some great points, Michael. I just wanted to honor a comment and question that was brought up by one of our attendees that asked why we did not have any folks outside of just like Black and white on this panel right now. And so just wanted to name that we do not have all of the Black, Indigenous, people of color identified, like represented on this panel. And we know that is a fault of ours, but just wanted to name that when you're having these conversations, it is important to have various perspectives along the spectrum of people of color. And so wanted to acknowledge that we did not have that. And that is definitely a perspective that we need to make sure that we have when we're having these intersectional conversations as well. So thank you for that comment. I would love to kind of take some of these things that are surfacing and shift to really think about in what ways might schools and districts level up. So level up thinking about how to move forward more anti-racist practices and also thinking about that anti-Blackness piece as well. And when we talk about anti-Blackness, because I know that may be a term that some people may not know, that's specifically thinking about the racism that is projected towards Black people. And so just like, it's this cloud of things that is constantly, you think about Blackness and there's this anti-Blackness piece. And so we wanted to just really unpack that a little bit. What are ways that schools, districts, leaders can really level up on doing this work? And Davion, I'm going to start with you.
So one way that schools and districts could level up is by having more conversations with their students on how they are in anti-racism school system and how certain behaviors are not allowed. They could also offer classes or workshops to help set an anti-racism mindset upon students and staff.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Davion. anyone else want to build on?
I'll build on.
No, go ahead.
I love what you said. That was perfect. And also, you know, as a teacher, I've been in many different districts. And what I've noticed is districts are passionate about some sort of program or some sort of theme. Like, is it like designing, or is it innovation? Like, that's their passion, and that's their goal, and that's what they're, you know, pushing towards. And that's what they spend thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on. But what if they took that same passion to have an anti-racist school? Spent thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to make sure that children see windows and mirrors of themselves and others in every single classroom, that teachers are taught how to put aside their biases and look at a child as a whole child, as, you know, teachers have been taught to do, and to take politics and, you know, their own issues and leave them at the door.
Yeah.
I think that would be huge, just to shift the mindset. You know, we put so much emphasis on a reading program and this, that, and the other. We need to give that same energy to this kind of work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to connect the two, Davion, can you repeat your response to that? Because I don't think a couple people heard it in the audience.
So I was saying that the school systems could have more conversations with their students about how they are an anti-racism school system and how certain behaviors would not be allowed or accepted. And they could also offer classes or workshops to put that anti-racism mindset into their staff and their students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really love that because it connects to, as Deshanna connected to your comment, I think it just brings it back home again, because I want you all to know the power that this is coming from a student that has noticed this from like her experiences, and saying that teachers need to go through these trainings. It's not just like you all need to talk about it with us as students, but like Davion's like, the teachers need to go through these trainings. So I thank you for repeating that again, because it is something that is needed. And it can't just be like, oh, check, we did that, racism is over. Like, it is a constant like work and motion that needs to happen. Michelle or Michael, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I'm like so fired up. I have so much to say. It may not even connect right, but just to build on what everybody says, like, it just can't be a class. I mean, we have that, and I'm grateful for that class. It can't just be a club, but I'm grateful for the club. You know, it can't just be those things. In my opinion, it's really not about the curriculum. It's about the kids, and it's about understanding who we are, about who they are, and about building those relationships and going from there. I was thinking a lot about this today. I would say that the one question I would want to ask my kids, my students, you know, when I first meet them, is how do we construct our thoughts and beliefs? How do you feel? Why do you feel the way you feel? I would love to have every class be that way, so that every teacher can connect with a student and build from that. For me, it's all about being culturally responsive. It's about knowing every single one of those kids and where they're coming from, and moving from that point. It's really hard to be in, you know, nothing against Avonworth, nothing against any school that's predominantly white, but it's difficult to be to work on those things in a predominantly white school. But it can be done. Those relationships can be built, and you can move students toward toward feeling that they can make a change. And I know it can be done. So it can be done with any class, any curriculum. And in my doctoral studies, I did studies of English teachers, social studies. It can be done in any class. You can get kids to really get together and make a difference and make a change. So just having those conversations and making students feel like they have a voice in the world, and that's just so important to me.
Michelle, I 100% agree. And I think the one thing she highlighted, which is important, and it comes back to what is education about? It all comes down to building relationships with people. You know, you can know all the content in the world, but if you can't connect with your students and meet them where they are, it's all for naught. And so being able, and I think Jessica in the chat, Jessica Vergara, pardon me if I mispronounced your last name, she made a comment about seeing historical figures on the wall. Well, we come into an all-Black school in a low-income neighborhood, and we put pictures up of George Washington, Beethoven. We know who these people are. We pronounce the names right, even as unorthodox as some of them may be. Yet we don't see historical figures other than the Rosa Parks or other than the Martin Luther Kings. We don't see some of the things that represent our cultures in a neighborhood where we're just begging and pleading to be represented. We already don't see ourselves represented by the teachers that are teaching us. In many cases, we don't see ourselves represented by the people leading the school. And then we come into a building and we see stuff that doesn't look like us, stuff we can't relate to. We're reading books, learning, a vernacular that's different than the Black vernacular, yet we have to adapt and adjust and relearn to live in this world. And we wonder why things aren't connecting. Yet we have to know, in order to build these relationships, you got to know who these kids are. You got to know what drives them. You got to know what they're connected to. And then we need to put those things on the wall. We need to put those things in the books that they read. We need to put those things in the meals that we serve. We need to put those things in the activities that we make available. We need to put those things in the professional development that we provide for the teachers so that they, yes, understand their bias, but B, understand that if you're going to join this work, you have to know it's about connecting with those kids. There is not one size fits all. There's none of that. We have to know that each individual student needs to be treated a certain way. Being Black does not mean that you fit a certain mold. I know that if I sign up to make X amount of dollars a year, it's because I'm passionate to connect with these kids so that when they leave here and go into the real world, they know that all people are welcome. All people have value, but they're not going to know that if they don't see it in the things that they read, if they don't see it on the walls. These are things we have to do, and it all comes down to the simple principle of building relationships and meeting those kids where they are.
Mm-hmm. Woo, we on fire today, y'all. I hope you can feel it. Ooh, we can snap it up. Also just want to name, so I'm going to come back to that. I just wanted to make this announcement. So if you are hoping, right now, all of the comments that are coming into the chat, all of us, the panelists, we can see that. If you want all of the attendees to do that, you can just go to 2 and click all panelists and attendees so everyone can see the comments that you're dropping. They're amazing. So I have 2 things that I want to connect. I think that's really powerful and really thinking about how all students can feel valued and really think about some of that change that comes within some of that professional development that Davion mentioned. There's this amazing thing that was dropped in the chat, and I just wanted to highlight that. So they were mentioning that I'm wondering, aside from professional development and making this a high priority for schools and district, how else can we push for systematic change? It seems like PD is a good start, but it's definitely not enough. We need to address hiring, curriculum, and policies. And I would say yes, yes, yes. So I think for the professional development, it's thinking about what is the, and I say you want to do this first, like what is that low-hanging fruit, and like what is the way that we can do this internally? Because if you get the things internal within those schools together, then when you're welcoming new people in, they'll come into this space where they feel seen, heard, and honored. But definitely, I think there needs to be some system change that happen, because there are some things that are broken in the system, and they're actually set up the way that it was built to set up and function for students of color not to succeed. And so there's some systematic things that need to happen, but also I think people find their lanes, especially as you think about within like organizing and activism. Everyone can't be on the front line. You have to find, am I gonna make the rice? Am I gonna hand out the water? Am I gonna put the pamphlets together? And so really figure out within the system where you fall in line and get to work, as Michael mentioned. There's another question that I have, I wanna throw to you all panelists. So I'm really interested in the leveling up idea. Much like Davion's school, my school is in a rural setting and not particularly diverse. I'm wondering what leveling up looks like in these settings. Maybe working with schools in more diverse communities so that students and educators learn from each other. I have a response, but I want to throw it to you panelists to see what you think.
Avonworth, when I was teaching at Avonworth, I was familiar with a program where an inner city school, high school, connected with our high school students. And I can't tell you the full how everything worked out, but I remember a student sharing with me how it was eye-opening for her. This student has her own vehicle. She's in her second year of college. She's doing well. Yet that time in this program, she got to meet new people who had a different drive for life. Nothing was handed to them. They had to work just to get to school. So they had a different type of appreciation when it came to being in the building. And so it opened her eyes to a world outside of our bubble is what we called it. That was one of those small yet impactful and effective connections that allowed two different communities to see how this world could truly be. One community got to see the struggles that some endured, but also the things that drove them. And then the other group of kids, I'm hoping and assuming, got to see what life can be like, you know, when we continue to get this education, when things are functioning the way they were supposed to, and it gives them something to work towards. It's just a small example of something that a rural district or a suburban district can do to connect. You look at pen pals, connecting with students, allowing them to write to each other in different parts of the city, you know, hearing their stories. At the very least, even if you were to connect with another white school, but in a different type of area, it gives you a chance to hear the different stories that people have. The one thing I've learned, and I continue to take with me everywhere I go, is we all have a story. No two stories are the same. And so even if it's the person of the same color, you have an opportunity as a rural district, as a suburban district, as a urban district, to connect with someone else, someone who you're not connecting with every day within your own sphere of influence, and learn their stories, learn those motivators that they have, and then adopt some things. Find some ways to challenge your thinking, find some ways to challenge your life, right? And that's a small practical example of one way you can connect, but do it with purpose. You don't want to be that rural area that says, we want to learn what it's like to be Black. Connect us with a Black school. But you want to come in saying, hey, I want to learn what it's like to be different. I want to learn to love difference. And then you connect each other and y'all come in and you build relationships, and watch. Those people may be in your wedding so many years from now, but give the kids a chance to see beyond what they see every day.
Anyone else want to jump in? I think to your point, Michael, I think, yeah, definitely thinking about how to think beyond and really engage. I think there's also this moment of understanding the genius that you have within your students and your culture currently, and how to elevate that. And so if you may have a small number of students or families in the communities that that are non-white, and really think about how you can tap into just not continuing to go to them and like tokenize them as like you are the keeper of all the knowledge for all the Black folks, tell us about the thing. But really think about how you can honor those cultures and those experiences that are there so all of the students can learn. And so really understand like the community that you have, and really try to understand that community and bring some of that culture into it. Deshanna, I know you came off of mute. You have something you want to add as well?
Yeah, I taught in a low-income rural district in Ohio, and I learned a lot. Like my kids would come to school and say, oh, I've never seen someone your color before. Oh, my family doesn't like people who are your color. So what one day my principal and I talked about, I'm like, where does this hate come from? Like, where does this stem from? And so I think finding out where the root of the issue is, like, where did this come, what misconception came? So basically in that area, they started like housing, and Black people moved in. And so they thought that Black people came in and took their jobs. So breaking those barriers and like hashing out what's the elephant in the room, because a lot of it stems from like the community, and working in the community as well, and building those connections within the community.
Yeah, Davion, I know you had something you wanted to share.
Yes. So at my school, we have a culture fair each year where each grade level picks a country. And then with your country, you get to prepare food, and you have activities for everyone to walk around to each classroom and participate. And this event is not only for like just the students in the school, but it's open for everyone, and it's after school hours.
Yeah, so really thinking about the culture fair and how to bring in those experiences from different cultures as well. Also, I want to name as we are talking, you may constantly hear us talk about like, as a Black man, as a Black woman, as a white woman, like we are naming those identities. And that is also something that we have to get comfortable with, is like naming those identities. And so Michael talked about like how it's important to not just like, I just want to see Black people, but I want to think about that difference, but also like honoring and naming, like as you're moving through this work and really being okay with the differences and the identities. And, you know, Deshanna, you brought it up a while ago about like not saying like, oh, I'm not colorblind, I don't see color, but it's like, if you don't see color, you don't see me. And so honoring what they're bringing, each of the students, each of your colleagues, as you're thinking about the curriculum, really honoring those differences and those experiences that are coming to the table. And really celebrating them, and not just feel like we have to celebrate during this particular month that the whole country like celebrates. It's like, no, we're going to sprinkle it all throughout the year. We're going to have these moments where we're celebrating, similar to that culture fair. Like, we're not just going to do it during this week, during this month. It's like, no, we're going to have this opportunity in December. We're going to have this opportunity in August. We're going to always have these moments to really engage.
It's about being intentional, but I also wanted to tie in. Davion talked about what her school does. I think what's important about it is they involve the community. I think there was a comment about what goes on in the school, and the reality is the school is, it's supposed to be a safe place. It's supposed to be a place where, you know, we learn things, but what we teach should not end at 3 o'clock when the day's over, when we cross the threshold and we're no longer in the building. It should go into the community. So having events that allow us to teach new cultures in our school, but then invite the community to be a part of this culture shift is going to be important. And that's part of the work, especially because, and I think one of the comments was, you know, how do you do this if we're in a community that doesn't support, or that isn't about, you know, equality, or doesn't, you know, necessarily value different races. But we have to know that if as a school community, it is important to kind of be that foundational rock, that solid rock that allows people, that is willing to go the extra mile, have events, and then say, in community, we invite you in to be a part of this as we learn and as we embrace. But that's a very, very helpful thing to do. Open your doors, allow people from the outside to learn. At the end of the day, a lot of this is learned behavior. And so, and while it's not going to change overnight, give folks an opportunity in the buildings and outside in the surrounding community to come together and learn something new, to learn something different, to learn another way, and then give them the choice. But don't be that school in the community where folks are one-sided and say, well, they're one-sided, so we didn't do anything to shift their mind. Mm-hmm. No. Provide an opportunity, bring them in, give them a chance, and then allow them to make a decision. But as the school, this is the least we can do, because if we don't, we're doing a disservice, not just to the kids in the community, in the school, but to the community as well. So then there's never going to be some inclusion when it comes to things going outside of those communities.
I agree with Michael. And one of the greatest things I agree was the time that 2 years ago when we we brought those kids together. They understood, then they appreciated, then they got excited about it. Our kids aren't going to know what they don't, they're just not exposed. They don't have those opportunities. And I wish we could provide more of that, as we move forward. And I've talked to the teacher who did that, and I think it's one of the best things, again, I've seen us do. So providing those opportunities is very essential. And you said something about pen pals. Even doing something like that gave me a good idea, Michael, even to do with my, ninth graders, just to maybe just have them reach out. I think that we would learn a lot from that, since we can't really connect like we used, like we normally could. Maybe do something like that, or even connect virtually with other groups of students.
Yeah, definitely. And Michelle, since I have you off of mute, I'm going to throw this question at you, and then I'm going to open it up to anyone else.
Okay.
So and this is a question that we had that came in from our Q&A, how would you help teachers learn how to be open and supportive of other races, and thinking about going beyond implicit bias?
Going beyond implicit bias. Okay, so are you saying, like, if we did work on implicit bias, where do we go from there? Is that what you're saying? Because I think that's essential to really talk about our biases.
Yes. I don't know. That was part of the question, but I'm assuming, and you can drop it in the chat, But I'm assuming that they're saying beyond just acknowledging I have implicit bias, like what is that next step of really like digging deep on this work and moving it forward?
Honestly, it's moving into those tough conversations. It's really having the conversations about how you feel and why you feel the way you feel, and just working through those things. Obviously, we have classrooms of kids that and adults that feel completely differently about things. So it's really just having those conversations, those difficult, really difficult conversations. There was, there are even moments in the classroom where you could just take a hold of a situation. Like I had kids say things, mean things to each other. And I think one kid say to another kid something, and I interrupted it. And another student said to me, "Why did that bother you? Why did that personally bother you?" He couldn't understand it. And I said, "That bothers me because that offends me. That hurts me because it hurts another person." Just having those conversations about that, opening up about that is really important. I think for faculty, starting with faculty, really, just having conversations, sitting in groups and talking about how they really feel about race is very important.
Yeah, and we had someone drop a comment, and they said the sad thing is that you have to get approved to talk about what our children deal with every day. And so if you recall, when we started this webinar, all of the panelists besides Michelle named that interaction and that connection on race from this negative place in the classroom started in elementary school. So these students, and it even starts before elementary school. So that's in the classroom because it starts on the playground. It happens before they even get to the school door. Like it happens very early on. Like, oh, I can't play with you. All of these things. So it starts early, but these are things that our students are experiencing every single day, but yet you have to get approved to do that. So really let that marinate and sit in your spirit. Like you have to get approved to talk about something that our students are experiencing every day. Deshanna, I see your head nodding over there. So I just want to.
Well, it's funny because, with everything that's happened recently and districts are putting out their statements. And the thing that bothered me the most was how we couldn't say Black people. And Tree of Life happened. There was a shooting at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. And when that happened, we were expected to talk about it to an extent, but there was no question about saying Jewish, it happened to the Jewish community. But I feel like when something happens with the Black community, we can't call it and say the Black community. I feel like it's harder to put that out there. And there's also the fear of like parents. So I'm really big on teaching like different cultures. Like today, I was sharing with teachers, I got this Scholastic order form and it says voices. And it's about Black literature, history, and life. And this book order is just Black people. And part of me didn't want to send it home because I was like, what parent's going to complain that I sent this home when all the other catalogs are filled with white faces? It's just frustrating that we can't talk about Black people and say Black people without worrying that there'll be consequences. Because, they'll think we're sharing an agenda or we're making it political or we're brainwashing their children. Even with LGBTQ rights, it's about, brainwashing the children into your own agenda and what you think and what you believe. But this is what I believe. Yeah, so that's why it just frustrates me that we have to check what we send home. Like I don't send home my social studies stuff. I don't. So it's harder now with hybrid because things go home and I'm like, I don't feel comfortable talking about, and I shouldn't feel that way. I shouldn't feel worried to talk about Hispanic culture for September. I shouldn't feel awkward speaking about different Black people, not in just February. Like it shouldn't be that way. But I feel like we don't take a stance to say, this is what we believe in and hold to it when people push back.
So if I can interject, there's one example that it made me a proud employee of the Avonworth School District. About a few years ago, a conversation from a white counselor, it was approved by the board, it was approved by the principals, and the conversation was centered around essentially white privilege, more specifically white male privilege. It was a conversation. I didn't see the curriculum that was approved per se, but a lot of things were touched on. And the reason why I bring this up is you're going to get pushback even when you do go to the board and the board does say yes. But the one thing that I loved is the board heard the parent. They listened to the parent, but they also stood their ground and said, this is a part of what the kids have to know. This is a part of what they're going to experience. And one thing that made the parent uncomfortable was the idea that men make more money than women. Why does it make you uncomfortable? It's not an assumption, it's a fact. And it doesn't matter what color you are. Men technically make more money than women in the same field, right? And so the fact that the district stood up just reminds us that even when you do get pushback, and we're going to get it, as a district, as a community, you have to know that here's where we stand. And that's why the district has to really truly understand their identity. If their goal is to make sure all students feel welcome, and that they're teaching the whole student, and that they're educating everyone holistically and reminding them of everything that goes on, then you have to be willing to stand up, take the punches, but then also say, hold on, wait a minute. It's a part of what they need to know. And then connect it to the curriculum so that way it doesn't seem like we're, like you said, Deshanna, pushing an agenda. But I was so happy when I was at that board meeting and I got to witness the board stand up and say, wait, but these are things that do happen and it was approved and these are things that our kids will know. And it just made me proud because I felt like even in that moment, they weren't afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations. But if I could say one thing, it's the fact that this is really going to define you as a district, as a person. When you are faced with adversity, when you're faced with pushback, do you stop? Do you shield yourself and run away? Or do you go in hardcore knowing that at the end of the day, this is what's right. This is what needs to be done. This is a part of the agenda. This is a part of what the kids have to learn. And then you go forward anyway. And if you do, know that everyone's not going to be on board, but that's okay. And I also want to remind you that if it was so easy, every district would be doing it. People would feel welcome. You wouldn't see the things that you see on the news. But that's why it's absolutely imperative that we stand up and say, hold on, I know you don't like it, but it's what needs to be done so that when these kids go home, they're not fearing for their lives. When this person applies for a job, they're not worried about being, given the shorthand because they're a woman or because they're Black or because they're Hispanic. Everyone knows that they have equal opportunity and they learn it in schools. Even though not everyone is on board, the schools have to be able to stand up. And then we as individuals have to stand up. I just wanted to throw that out there real quick. I was so proud of Avonworth. I really was.
Thank you for that, Michael. We have a comment here, and then I'm going to connect it to, we'll do a couple more questions. So this comment, the Black students in my district took to social media, Instagram, and shared their stories of what they were facing. Still, my district is not moving quickly to address this. Board resolutions are great, awesome, but in action isn't. Please look at, they add the Instagram, Black, INPUSD at Instagram, and I'll post that in there. So this is important because we talked about this earlier, how like these are the experiences that the students are having, some in the classroom with their teachers, with their peers, with school leadership within the district, but also just their experiences just moving through this world as Black students or students of color. And so the students are taking it in their own, like, I'm going to take to my social media because I'm going to share this because my voice has been stifled at this space. And so I wanted to, Davion, I wanted to get your perspective from a student's perspective. How could schools and classrooms create a more anti-racist and anti-Black environment?
So a lot of the information we learn now is focused more on the history of white American history, but educating kids on the American history of African Americans will give people knowledge that they have no clue about. Another thing is that there could also be a change in highlighting the fact that many of the changes that have been made for the Black community were not that long ago. Also, putting more Black educators in the school system would provide African American students the opportunity to feel more connected and comfortable in their school system. And then I also suggest that teachers who are not of color may go to a training where they learn what is okay and not okay to say to an African American student.
Yeah. And hearing this, since we have, you know, an administrator on this call and we have some teachers, what are your reactions to this and how can you really amplify these ideas that Davion suggested?
First of all, they were great suggestions. The one thing, let's start with the fact that not teaching white history, but teaching, and I would argue not teaching Black history either. Teaching American history and not, you know, making it pretty. That alone is sending an agenda. But understanding that there were some good things that we've done as American history, and there were some not so good things at the expense of, you know, many people. Let's look at how we ended up here in the first place. And we talk about immigrants. This wasn't our land. And I say our land, but, you know, we have to, but I also want to highlight not penalizing people for how they feel. Being willing to hear their stories, whether it's on social media or in a comment, and not saying, well, oh no, I didn't experience that. Always go back to this one comment, and this is just truly how I feel. When someone comes and explains to you and they make themselves vulnerable and say, hey, hold up, here's how I feel. This is what I felt happened to me. Here's what I experienced. And then we say, oh, no, we gaslight the situation. Oh, that didn't happen, or you're making this up, or you can't prove it, or why are you speaking up now? It's very similar to me, and I always use what we do to women when it comes to sexual abuse. We try to tell them, oh, well, it didn't happen. Well, why didn't you say it when it happened then? Or we didn't see it, or no, that person's too nice. Stop. That's not what they want to hear. And then we wonder why people won't speak up. We have to be okay with the fact that even though it didn't happen to me, it just might have happened to them. And I need to stop, listen, hear them, empathize with them, and then figure out what am I going to do so that no one else experiences that. It's not about me in that moment. I want to hear, Davion, exactly what you feel. And then as an administrator, I want to do something about it. I can't change your situation. I can't make you feel better, but I can help you feel like I'm doing everything in my power as a school leader so that you know it will not happen to the next person. And then I want to address a comment that happened in this chat box, which was, how do we, it's great to look at the district policies and what about the teachers? Well, it's up to the district. The district hires these teachers. They need to be mindful of the people they're bringing into their buildings. Folks coming in saying things like, I don't see color, they're not going to work here. Because even if it's an all-white district, that's not the mentality you need to be teaching your kids, because they're going to see color when they go into the real world. I'm getting real hot. Okay, but with all that in mind, we have to, it's up to the district leaders, the superintendents, the board, the community to make sure everyone in that building doesn't look the same, doesn't act the same. It should not be a shock that there's a gay kid in the school. There's nothing wrong with it. I don't care what I personally believe. They should feel like they have a place. And then when they tell you they felt like they don't say, oh, well, we do everything we can. No, hear them. Understand where they're coming from and do something about the next experience so that they don't have to have a next experience. It all goes back to that very important piece. Relationships, hearing people, allowing them to share their story unapologetically. I shouldn't tell you I'm hurt and then apologize for the fact that I'm hurt. And then we wonder why people won't step up. It is important that district leaders, administrators, teachers, and the students in the school community understand that there's nothing wrong with diversity. There's nothing wrong with differences. And when people say, I feel like this isn't being heard, or I feel that this isn't being done, it is okay to say, I'm sorry you feel that way, but leave the but out. Because there is no but. They shouldn't feel that way, but the fact that they do means you need to figure out how you're going to make sure that doesn't happen going forward. And I wanted to remind everybody, we didn't get to this position overnight. We didn't get to it. And when you start doing this diversity, equity, and inclusion work, even in the midst of working hard to fix these situations, you're still going to have scenarios where people feel uncomfortable. That's going to come with it, but don't stop, don't let up, and still make sure all kids know I'm here. I'm here. If nothing else, I hear you. I hear you. I hear you. And do something about the situation so that no one gets to that point next. That's all I'm trying to say. At the end of the day, no one should feel sorry for how they feel, but there should be a culture and an atmosphere in those buildings to where people are okay with bringing themselves holistically to the table, saying, here's where I am. They're not looking for a fix me right now. They're willing to just share their soul, their heart. Here's where I am. And they want to know that the Dr. George is on the call, that the community engaged leaders like Malaron, that the students like Davion, the teachers like Deshanna, and the superintendents on the call are going to do everything as a team to make sure these things don't happen. I would tell you my dear friend, but it's really not my dear friend. Malcolm X once said, when I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness. What does that tell us? It tells us that you can try to do this all on your own. But until we replace the I with the we and it becomes a team effort, it's going to be hard to overcome some of these challenges. If you take nothing else away, know that we're in this together.
Well, thank you, Reverend Warren, closing us out with the benediction. You make a lot of amazing points, and I would love for us to have, 2 more hours to unpack all of that, but we do not. And so I would love for each person on the panel to just share any closing words that they have for the attendees around how to sustain these anti-racist schools and classrooms. So, Michael, I know you're on fire and you're probably sweating, so I'm gonna come to you last. But anyone else that wants to jump in first, and Michael, you're gonna bring us home.
I can go. Something I'm passionate about, and especially since I had my son, is being intentional with literature. A simple thing, because when everything happened, all my white friends asked me, what books about race and racism can you give me for my child? And it made me stop and think, we need to go beyond that before that. We need to talk about different cultures, different identities, making sure that everyone and our kids' bookcase and our bookcase at our classroom's bookcase is at the table. Being inclusive everywhere they look. Not just picking up a racism book when someone gets shot. Kids need to see other people, appreciate other people, love other people for who they are. And with that, they'll build empathy, because kids have amazing empathy. When they hear about things that have happened to me because of the color of my skin, that are like, when racism happens to me, they are angry. They are ticked. Now, if a child didn't hear those things from a Black person that they knew, how would they react? So I just, check your libraries. That's my big thing. Check your books. Make sure the children that you work with are seeing different people, are seeing different identities, seeing different people that are a part of the table. And that empathy will build. So we're not backtracking and problem shooting and say, oh, we got to teach them not to be racist. No, we should have taught them a long time ago to love everyone, and that everyone is welcome.
Awesome. Davion, Michelle, and then Michael.
Today with my 9th graders, I teach a class called Seminar. I gave them the quote, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Dr. Martin Luther King. And I'm going to give them a week to really think about that quote. And in a week, we're going to talk about it, and we're going to have some good conversations. And I'm really excited about that. I just really think that at the foundation, and we do a lot of great things at Avonworth, with regard to building those relationships. So just that's the core, and really building those relationships, knowing your students and making them feel safe and comfortable, and giving them, I like what somebody wrote. Somebody typed in something there. Don't just make it a safe space, make it a brave space. I love that. That resonated with me. I don't remember who put that in the chat, but make students feel brave about how they feel, you know, and give them support when they need it. That's how I feel.
Davion, do you have any closing words of wisdom you want to leave us with?
Yes, I would just say to just make it known that everyone, especially students that look like me, should be loved equally, and make sure that everyone feels comfortable being themselves.
Yes. And Michael, bring us home.
I'm gonna bring us home. I agree with it all. And I definitely love the last comment, not just sharing the struggle, but seeing people of color experiencing joy. Here's the reality. There are Black doctors, y'all. Black lawyers. There are Black electricians. There are Black people who look like me in the classroom. We do things. We didn't just struggle all our lives. And some of us, we did struggle all our lives, but that wasn't the end, right? I wanted to highlight the fact that being anti-racist has to do with being intentional about not just saying, I'm not racist, but speaking up against the things that you witness that are racist. Whether it be Dr. George reminding a student that while I may not be a person of color, that can't be said in this classroom, right? You have power. We have power to change the world. And it starts with being intentional about the things we do, the things we say, how we represent one another, speaking up, speaking out, being bold, and even in the midst of adversity, don't stop because we know it's right. And I wanted to leave you with this idea, this concept. Think of the holiday season, Christmas, whatever you might celebrate. And think about Silent Night, when they shut off the lights and they give one person a candle. And they light his candle, her candle. And that one person lights the person to their left. Then they light the person to their right. And that one little light that started has now lit up an entire room. Y'all are the light. Even if it's a small one, reach out to the person to your left. Reach out to the person to your right. Eventually, this place will catch a fire. The room will light up. And that little light of yours, as long as you let it shine, we ultimately will change the world. Be intentional about everything you do and know that it's not going to be easy, but it is worth it in the end.
And in closing, thank you for that, Michael. I just wanted to share a poem from the Lord, Audre Lorde. When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid. Audre Lorde. Dwayne, I'll turn it over to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much to Davion, our future, Deshanna and Michelle, our superheroes in the classroom. You guys are doing a great job, I'm sure, trying to do this virtual learning and face-to-face. To our other superhero, Michael, and our bishop, Michael, thank you so much. This was phenomenal. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us today on our town hall series today, talking about sustaining anti-racist schools and classrooms. This is one of the most important topics that we can ever talk about. Since COVID starting and the social justice unrest that have happened, our lives have changed. And my hope is that when all of this is over, well, COVID is over, that we don't return to business as usual. I see this as an opportunity to change the way that we educate our children, especially ones that look like me. So I would like to thank you guys and remind you guys of the future town halls that are coming up. This is the kickoff to our League of Innovative School Town Hall Series Part 2. And you will be hearing more from us. Follow us on our social media platforms to hear when our next round of town halls coming up. Also to watch our Series 1 and all the other great stuff that we're doing with our equity chats. You can find it on our YouTube channel. At youtube.com, Digital Promise. And we look forward to hearing from you guys soon. Thank you, everyone, and Godspeeds to all.